Jose, how are you?
I'm well. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's lovely to chat with you.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a treat.
I love the Christmas decorations behind you, by the way.
You know what? We took down a bunch of the decorations around the house, and the tree has been stripped of the ornaments. But my 7-year-old and 4-year-old are like, do not take away the sparkly lights, like the fairy lights. And yeah, every year now, my wife made this like 3 years ago, and yeah, every year we're like, we should just like leave that up full time because it really does make the kitchen feel a little more festive, you know?
Love that. That's what my mom and I try to convince my dad and I to leave the Christmas lights up a little bit longer every
Right?
year. But this year,
Especially like if we don't
put it
get them
down.
up early, like I
Yeah.
don't know, we get our lights up like maybe like right at the end of November, whereas like every year I'm like, Remembrance Day, let's start decorating. And my was like, let's give it like let's respect Remembrance Day and give it like a couple days. I'm like, all right, fine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, see, you
Yeah.
get me. That's totally how I am too. It's
Yeah.
November, Christmas.
Right? Yes. October, Christmas. Forget Halloween. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. Big Christmas house. Big Christmas house. I start my baking November 1st. Got to get those cookie boxes
Nicole,
going.
you found your
Perfect. I
person.
was about to say, wow, this is amazing. Where were you in November, December when I was fighting Gracie for Christmas talk on the show? Well, I wanted to start off by congratulating you, not only on this film, but I know it's also your feature directorial debut. So congratulations on all of that altogether.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I wonder if you could share a little bit. I know you've been working on this story for a little over a decade now, I believe. So how has this changed as you've gained more experience behind the camera and the director's chair, and how you approached telling this story?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote the first draft of Young Werther 12 years ago, and at the time, I was only ever really aspiring to be a screenwriter. I shouldn't say only; it's just what I was aspiring to do. But yeah, in the process of interviewing directors to attach to this film or other films I'd written, I always had this like nagging feeling that I was like, why not me? Why don't I try and bring to life these things that I'm helping bring to life on the page. And yeah, so I started making shorts and music videos and commercials, and yeah, just slowly built up enough experience, or I don't know if anyone would say like enough experience, but some experience that I could then bring to the production company, to Wildling. After having been set up at studios and streamers with other directors and other actors attached over the years, yeah, to have Wildling say, "We believe in you as a director. We're looking at this body of work you have, and yeah, let's go figure out how to make this film."
Amazing.
One of the shots that I wanna get into the shots because there's so
Oh
many
yeah,
amazing ones. But
right.
one
Let's all
that
celebrate Nate, the cinematographer, genius.
yeah. Something that really caught my eye that I wanted to ask you about was the neon sign when they're in the bar together is like an electric bolt there.
Yes.
So was that something that you thought of? And is there anything in the movie that you think people might not have caught on to that is symbolic for you?
Oh my gosh. First of all, great catch, great insight, and I could talk for hours about all the things in the movie that I hope people find or feel or respond to. Yeah, the lightning bolt neon sign is 100% intentional. And that was an idea of our from our production designer, Kiara Vernon, who just on a Canadian indie film budget, I think made the film look like 10 times what its budget was. Like I think she did such an incredible job building Werther's world. And when we were talking about the lighting scheme, we had meetings with Kiara, our production designer, and our costumer, Courtney Mitchell, and our incredible cinematographer and one of my favorite people in the world now, who I didn't even know before the film, but now I speak to pretty much all day, every day, Nick Haight. Yeah, we had meetings about color in the film and how the color would evolve throughout the film and the lighting and yeah, when Kiara was looking for ways to sort of coordinate the lighting with the costumes in that scene and the way Nick was lensing it, she had found this neon lightning bolt, and we were like, oh my God, this completes this frame. This is perfect. It like fits with the decor of the bar, but it has this sort of very like clear meaning. It's like it's hitting it on the head, and it's cartoonish in some ways. It feels like I'm watching like a Looney Tunes moment from, but at the same time, it feels like appropriate and just beautiful. I just love the quality of the light that came off it. And yeah, I love the lightning bolt. I mean, other things in the film, I really every scene, there's moments and things that are intentional. I don't know, this is popping into my head, but this is another Nick suggestion that I love so much, which we shot the whole film in this anamorphic widescreen to give the movie like some cinematic weight because it's something that I think can be read as like a light story, but to me it's always been this romance that's like full of yeah, like depth and wonder, and it feels very like special to me. And so Nick suggested these lenses, and this one set of lenses, there's only like 12 of them in the world. I'm gonna butcher exactly what they are, but I know they were used to shoot like Euphoria and like The Dark Knight, and like they're like a very fancy set of lenses. But whenever Werther and Charlotte are alone, we didn't shoot them on the anamorphics. We shot them on sphericals and cropped them so that they would have the same real estate on the frame, but the spherical just makes them a little more immediate in the frame, gives them their own sort of visual world only when they're together. So it's not something that like you really I don't think like distinctly notice, but there's a feel whenever they're together that they're in their own special space together, separate from everyone else in the world. So that's one visual detail that I think about all the time.
I love that you brought up the widescreen because as I was watching it, how you chose to like shade in the corners, how it gets darker on the corner, so it feels like you're looking through that camera lens. I don't know how to describe it. Like the best way I can think is I feel like I'm watching this storybook that they're in unfold right through the camera, and I loved it. And I thought that was such a smart detail that you and Nick and the rest of the team put for that. That was really special, I thought.
Oh, I mean, I love that too. That's a natural vignetting that is from this specific set of lenses. That yeah, and sometimes we left it in when we wanted to like have it feel a bit more heightened into that. Like we kept saying like we wanted the film to feel grounded and like very much of the real world, but also to have it feel like it's its own slightly romantic, slightly ethereal, slightly like one foot off the ground kind of place. And yeah, without it feeling like a full fairy tale, but just hinting at it and giving it like an anachronism or an anachronistic quality at times to have this book that is so timeless be interpreted as this film that is also similarly out of time.
Adding on to that, I am curious. I don't know. We had a debate about this because I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I had to bring it up. The
Yeah.
colors in the film are so vibrant at the start. It seems like very bright, but then as the film progresses, it loses its shine. Is that something that we're meant to see from Werther slowly losing his spark or becoming more rational?
1,000,000%. And I love that you felt it. And I love that you nailed it. Yes, this was like one of and this, like the whole, like the production design team was a massive part of that. But Courtney Mitchell and her team, the costumers, it really like we assigned each of the characters their colors and everything was very vibrant and everything was very immediate to each character. And Werther is very much dominated by reds and Charlotte was very much in sort of blues and neutrals, and everyone had their own sort of like color scheme. But as Werther and Charlotte come together and become more connected, they start trading pieces of clothing, and we see them take on each other's color schemes, and it does start to bleed out. And you're right, at the end of the film, that shot of Werther writing at his desk, he's almost completely washed out. He's matured. He's not this impulsive, dominated by red. Young man. And Courtney had this other great idea when we were dressing Charlotte in the Law Society scene. She's completely shut Werther out of her life. She's married Albert, but he is still so present in her that striking red gown that she wears. It's like she's taking it on fully. I love so much that you noticed that and that you debated it. This makes me so glad. I feel my heart feels very full.
I wanted to talk to you also about a line that I caught in the film that Werther says to Charlotte when they're in, I believe it's the park, and she asks him if he or she can read some of his work. And he says, referring to his work, will never be as good as the work of the authors I admire. Now, I mean, I imagine anyone who works in a creative field has someone they look up to or take inspiration from. So for yourself, I wanted to ask you, who in the filmmaking industry do you take inspiration from? But then also in your personal life, who has inspired you to fulfill your dreams in the filmmaking industry throughout your life?
Oh, I mean, I'll preface all this by saying when I was a kid, I had no aspirations towards being involved in film whatsoever. Like, I loved movies, I loved books. I think if I imagined anything for myself, it would be to work in newspapers and write novels. And I did work in newspapers and magazines for a little while, and learned that it wasn't quite for me. Like, it was, I'm an awful journalist. I'm just not great at it. I loved writing for the sake of writing, but yeah, it was not the path. People I look up to, I mean, there's so many people that I find so inspiring and so like, I mean, I don't know if this is tip of the tongue right now. I think like I love the catalog of like John Hughes, like I love the like 80s and 90s John Hughes work. I love Mike Nichols. I love Elaine May. I love Paul Mazursky's films. I think P.T. Anderson and Wes Anderson are, like I started seeing their films when I was sort of 15, 16, and I don't know if anything had as big an impact on me as their films, and continue to be so impressed by them. I love Aaron Sorkin's writing. I love Mariel Heller's films. I'm still like shocked that It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood was not the biggest film in the world. I saw that at TIFF a few years ago, and I walked out of there being like, whoa, this is a perfect movie. This is going to dominate everything. And I feel it didn't get the due that it should have. I don't know. Yeah, I think she's a genius. Um, I don't know. There's so many writers. I read this book recently. Have you guys read The Husbands by Holly Gramazio? Oh my God, this book. I want the rights. I want the rights to this book. It's so good. It's just like it's sort of a comedy, it's sort of sci-fi, but it's very much literary fiction. Sort of a sliding doors Groundhog Day conceit where this woman who's unmarried lives in a flat, and one day, like first page of the book, a ladder comes down from her attic and a husband comes down. She looks around and like her flat has changed and her life has changed. She's like, I'm married to this person. But every time she sends him back up into the attic, and every time she does, a new husband comes down and her world has changed again. And throughout the course of the book, she goes through like 400 husbands. It's yeah, just a fascinating conceit and so fun. Yeah, love Holly Gramazio. Love Tana French, the Irish writer. I think she's a genius. Who doesn't love Sally Rooney? Just read the new Sally Rooney. Yeah, I don't know. I could just go off about like films and books all day long. Wait, was there another part of the question that I missed? There was the who
I
do
was
I
just gonna
look
say
up?
anyone in your personal life maybe who's always like inspired you or
Oh,
pushed you to chase your dreams in film.
Oh, I mean, classic like mom and dad. My mom especially, like, she was giving me books that I was probably not ready for at a young age. Or not that I wasn't ready for, but I remember I was like, maybe 12 or 13, and she gave me this book, Patty Clark, Ha Ha Ha, by Roddy Doyle, which like won the Booker Prize that year. And she was like, I think you'll like this, like was just always yeah, she watches everything. She's like so well versed in television and film and books, like a reader, but like never I mean, what a gift. Never in a pretentious way or never in a judgy way. Like she's just someone who like loves things and loves to talk about them, is excited by them, and has always like when I worked at the newspaper, this was 20 years ago, I had a column at the Toronto Star. She has every single one of them, like still every paper copy, like in a box in her bedroom, like it's the classic thing. Who's a better champion than mom, and whose opinion are you most quickly to dismiss than your greatest fan, than your mother? So when she was at the premiere of the film and afterwards was like, it was so gorgeous, best night of my life, I'm like, okay, sure, like you kind of have to say that, mom, but I'm slowly inching towards the idea that she's being as honest about that as she as everything else that she has with me ever.
Oh, that's such a sweet moment. And I want to say it's really funny that you mentioned Wes Anderson because Gracie
Yeah.
and I, when we were talking right after we watched the film, we said to each other that the film very much reminded us of Wes Anderson's work. So that's very funny that you bring that up because that's very much what we got from it.
I love that. It's come up a couple times where people are like, I don't want to offend you, but is there a Wes Anderson-y kind of thing? And I was like, what offense would I take to be mentioned in the same breath as, to me, one of the greatest working filmmakers? Like, of course, massive influence. I saw Rushmore at Cinema du Parc when I was living in Montreal, and it was the first time I think I'd ever realized that movies were made by people who might have like an authorial voice in a film. I think up until that point, I just thought all movies were like, I don't know, like, oh, Sony's got a new movie, Universal put out a movie. Like it just didn't, I wasn't around people who wrote books or made movies, or it just, it was like, when I was thinking about careers, I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I could be like an administrator at like a university because my mom does that. I don't know. These were like the things I thought of. So yeah, Wes Anderson, like amazing. I love that. Incredible.
As Canadians, I feel like I need to bring this up, but obviously the film was set in Toronto as opposed to other Canadian cities. Was there a reason for that? Or like even a lot of films now film in Toronto and then fake it and say it's LA or New York. So why was it important for it to be located in this location?
I'm not from Toronto originally, but I've lived all over this country. I'd never considered another Canadian city, but I mean, I've lived in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, where I was born. We lived in Halifax, moved to Port McMurray for work, and then Edmonton is where I like went to elementary school and junior high. I went to university, or I went to high school in Vancouver Island, university in Montreal. Then I moved to Toronto. So I feel like I have a strong pan-Canadian experience
Yeah.
to draw from and consider, but yeah, Toronto was always it for me. Like I love this city. I love living here. I think it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I think it's one of the most romantic cities in the world. It's where I met my wife. It's where my two little girls are growing up. My family has all moved here. My brother and his husband are a few blocks away. My mom and dad are a few blocks away. The friends I've made with their own little kids are all in our beautiful little area. I feel very lucky to be living in this city. And it's an incredible city. It deserves its due on screen. You're right. It's always playing somewhere else, or very often. It's not that it's never on screen, but it should be on screen even more, especially with the volume of film and TV that's shot here. It's Toronto's the city of the future. It's got all this freshwater, arable land, our beautiful multicultural communities, our art, our literature, our music, our business, all of it. It's yeah, what a lucky thing to live in a place like this. I don't know.
I could not agree more with that.
I wanted to ask you too about at the end, of course, we see the Soar as a Young Werther featured because we see where they're sent it to Charlotte, but we also see in another scene the novel Franny and Zoe featured. And I wanted to ask you, was there a reason that you chose that specific novel to feature in the film in that scene?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like so Franny and Zoe is a novel I love so much. And the reason I chose the book in the original novel, there's a key scene where Werther recites this epic poem to Charlotte, Ossian. And when they're reciting the poem, they become overwhelmed with emotion, and that's when they finally kiss. And so I was like, if we're doing a contemporary version of this, what would be the thing that connects them and makes them feel emotions that are greater, would stir them up? And it's this love for a shared book, uh which I think is, books, film, TV, like these are things that we're excited to share with people and that connect us. And I just love the idea of this book, which shares themes with the film, being this catalyst for their sort of like ultimate connection. And the only reason I brought up the pronunciation thing is because to to have the book in the film, we had to get permission from the Salinger estate, and J.D. Salinger's son, Matt Salinger, gave us permission and wanted to speak on the phone before we shot, and he gave me the correct pronunciation, and I feel awful that I cannot. That I'm like, wait, is it Sui? Is it Zoe? I, it's this, my wife gave me grief for the longest time where I was always convinced that her birthday was January 9th, and it's January 11th. But every
Oh,
year I'd be like, babe, I'm gonna get it right this year, January 9th. Like so confident. She'd be like, it's the 11th. And I'd be like, are you sure? Are you gaslighting me? Is this a gaslight? Is that what's happening here? And then the same thing the next year, I would like write it down and stuff, be like, make sure you don't. And like next year, I'd be like, happy birthday. And she'd be like, it's in 2 days. I'm like, ah. Anyway, that's how I'm feeling with Franny and Zoe right now.
Well, you got 2 days till the birthday now. I'm looking at the calendar. I'm like, oh, it's the ninth.
That's it. Oh, whoa, you're right. It is the night. And just earlier today, I was like, I'm so sorry. I have nothing planned. We will do something fun. And she was like, actually, I know what I want to do. There's this perfume place that we're going to go to that makes a custom perfume or something. And I was like, great, let's pretend I came up with it and let's do that. That sounds very nice. Yeah.
Amazing. Perfect plan.
One thing that I caught, it came up in a few times in the film, and I need to know what the symbolism was. But gelato, what is going on with that, and what is your favorite flavor?
Oh, I mean, my favorite flavor is marshmallow gelato, and Barape for all of its wonderful flavors, they don't actually offer a marshmallow flavor. When I was living in Edmonton as a kid, if we ever went on like a school ski trip, we'd have to drive through Calgary, and there was this drive-in on the highway, sort of like the highway that would run through Calgary on the way to the mountains, called Peter's Drive-In, and they had like 50 milkshake flavors. And I loved the marshmallow milkshake. It was so like exotic and fun. And anytime I find a place that has marshmallow ice cream, I just go for it. There was a place up at Spadina and Bloor, sort of in the front of the JCC, Greg's Ice Cream, and they had a burnt marshmallow flavor that was so good. Yeah, there's a place around the corner from us, Moon Milk, here in Toronto. That's a wonderful sort of like indie ice cream shop that has a delicious marshmallow. Anyway, love marshmallow ice cream. And in the movie, so there's a beat when they're taking the ice cream to Albert at work, and in that moment, Charlotte, who she's been living this life of responsibility and sort of always doing the right thing, but she's sort of been infected by Werther and taking his attributes a little bit. He's taking some of her attributes, and in that moment, Charlotte is behaving like a child almost, the same way that Werther would behave, and she's chosen the most impractical version of a gelato possible. Like ice cream on a stick is, that's not for adults. Ice cream on a stick is for kids, and they're both sort of like hop, skipping, running past security with this impractical thing, interrupting a meeting, while ice cream's melting on their hands. And in that moment, it's like, I feel like Charlotte is trying to access Albert in the way that Werther has accessed her and sort of open him up. And I think that's like where she's going instinctively. And I think there's something very like final about that moment when Albert takes her aside and is kind of like yelling at her, like giving her almost like a parental talking to silently in the room, and Werther's watching, and he takes his like sip of tea, like bite of the gelato bar, and Albert, walks by and goes back to work and just thrusts that like children's bar back in Werther's hand. Yeah, that's sort of the why we had it in a cup in the beginning, and you just tasting it away, and then having this thing that is yeah, I think a marker of youth and indiscretion and irresponsibility, even though it's just an ice cream.
I love that.
That's awesome. Well, I know we're running out of time here, but I did just want to mention to you the ending credits of the film. I loved the artwork, the floral artwork, and then followed up by the video as it runs under the rest of the credits because I think it's like when you watch other films and it kind of has maybe if it has like an artsier start to the credits, but then it just rolls the rest with a black background. And I thought that was really interesting. So, how did you come to that decision to do all that artwork and that video too with the credits?
I mean, the artwork, there's a real floral motif in the original novel. Like it's in the original novel, it's set sort of in the countryside much more, and Werther is so enamored with nature and the lush greenery and the life that's so different than life in the town where he's from. And so we wove in sort of this floral motif throughout the film. Like when Werther first sees Charlotte at the gelato shop, there's like this wall of roses behind him, and Charlotte and Albert's house is so lush and green, and they're constantly like in these green spaces and these floral spaces. It's worked into the wallpaper in the hotel room. It's just wherever Werther goes, there's life and there's a blooming. That's sort of the thinking behind it. And so for the credits, we just wanted to continue with that, like hammering that like floral theme. And then moving into the and with the Berlin photos as well, giving Paul and Werther their grace note, the adventure that Werther always wanted to go on. And then the dancer at the end, the day that we were shooting the scene that takes place at the hotel bar, and Werther notices the dancer. So that dancer, his name's Miles. He came on the day as just a regular background performer, supporting player. But during that scene, we kind of quickly identified him. We're like, whoa, this guy can move, and we upgraded him to a special performer. And yeah, had this idea that we're like, we threw on Robin's Call Your Girlfriend, and just floated around with it. It was one of these like on the fly ideas that I was like, this feels like it just feels like the spirit of the movie. It feels like even when even when you're by yourself on the dance floor, even when you're by yourself in life, um, there's hope, there's optimism. You can always dance. This is my mother's thing very much. She loves to dance. This is yeah, it just felt very like, yeah, alive and in tune with the movie we were making, and it's just so fun and weird and lovely and beautiful. And what else do you want from life for a film than that?
Yeah, I thought it was such a beautiful way to tie it all together. I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to Miles.
Well, thank you so much. I know we're out of time, so we will let you go. But thank you so much, Jose, for taking the time to speak with us today. We can't wait to share this tomorrow on our show.
Oh, and thank you so much. This is so lovely. Thank you for the insightful, thoughtful questions and noticing all the things that I think anyone who's ever made anything hopes people will notice in the work. So that is so yeah, so lovely and gratifying. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. That means
Yeah.
a lot to hear too. Thank you.